reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, a classic Third Doctor line that has rarely ever been said by Jon Pertwee. Hi everyone, TardisGuy123 here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Third Doctor Adventures. What on earth is that? I'm never doing that again. But anyway, here's the front, here's the spine, here is the back, there's disc 1, there's disc 2, there's the alternative cover, there's disc 3, disc 4, disc 5, Companion Chronicles advertisements behind disc 5, front of the booklet, back of the booklet, and inside of the booklet. Now, before I talk about the Third Doctor Adventures itself, I want to talk about my experience with Jon Pertwee's era, the Third Doctor era. And it's really sort of like the thing that started me on Classic Who, at least. You know, I was into the new series, I was watching Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant. At the time they were on, Jon Pertwee was the Doctor who was always on UK TV Gold, and that was the one I would always watch Saturday mornings. And to always watch all those stories. Had Frontier in Space on video, you know, that old thing that some people still use. And yeah, it's just wonderful to watch that story unfold as like have the Daleks at the end of that. Those wonderful memories I have of that story, and it's part of the reason it's one of my favourites. I mean, it's still a very strong story, but the nostalgia behind it really does help me with that, and that nostalgia extends to the whole of the Third Doctor era. Stories like The Demons that I didn't really watch properly as a child, but I still sort of have images of there in the back of my head while they were on the TV, while I was eating my breakfast or doing whatever I did when I was 8. Growing up for me, it was sort of like that time when Jon Pertwee was considered the classic Doctor. Nowadays it's more Tom Baker, but for me it was always Jon Pertwee that was the Doctor. Stories like Spearhead from Space, The Demons, and The Sea Devils, these wonderful things that were always on TV, and you know, they were just absolutely wonderful and really are ingrained in my memory as stories from a very special era. Now that I'm older and that I've bought loads and loads of DVDs and sort of like gone back, watched them and recaptured those glory days, it really is wonderful to like have all these Third Doctor stories. And then I went into Big Finish and sort of like Third Doctor stories were a bit low, really. We only had some Companion Chronicles and one Lost Story, and that was about it for the Third Doctor. And you know, other Doctors like the Fourth Doctor had his own range, the Eighth Doctor had multiple ranges of his own, the Fifth, Sixth and Seventh Doctors all had their own trilogies within the main range. And yet, through all this, the Third Doctor was almost completely left out, really. Enter the solution to that problem, the Third Doctor Adventures. Now, obviously, the first thing many people noticed about this was the recasting of Tim Trelaw as the Third Doctor, and he played the role in The Light at the End, and yeah, he wasn't the best in that, and loads of people were free to admit that. They said he did an awful job in that. I wouldn't say it was an awful job, but I would say it's nothing compared to what he's done now. He really has captured the spirit of the Third Doctor, very much so. He's got the flow of the voice. It's very much like Fraser Hines as the Second Doctor in the early adventures. You know it's not Patrick Troughton, but if you sort of like don't overanalyze it too much, if you just sit there and observe the story, you very much still feel that that Doctor, the character of the Doctor is there, even if the exact voice and the actor aren't there. You can say the same thing about Tim Trelaw here. The spirit of Jon Pertwee, or more accurately the Third Doctor, lives on through Tim Trelaw in this story. He really does do a great job capturing that, capturing all the cadences, all the little bits of his voice that very few impersonators can. You know, you have impersonators who can do the odd line, such as "Great Walls of Fire," but you know, you don't really have someone who can actually read new lines very well and be the Third Doctor, embody that character. But Tim Trelaw does a wonderful job with that. And yet, listening to the extras, you really can feel his passion for this character and that he has done his research into that. So that's very nice as well. And in fact, because Katie Manning and Richard Franklin have aged, obviously, between now and the 70s, their voices have aged with them, and they do sound quite different, especially Katie Manning. Richard Franklin not so much, but Katie Manning does sound quite different, and you know, that sort of like helps to ease Tim Trelaw in there, because he doesn't sound much like the Third Doctor, but at the same time Katie Manning doesn't sound much like Joe, and Richard Franklin doesn't sound too much like Mike Yates, but they still got it there somehow, so that works. And I'm not sure what I was really saying. That sort of like I went off on one a bit. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, they do sound like how they did, but don't sound exactly how they did is what I was trying to say. But the way I ended up saying it made it sound completely different. Ignore that. But anyway, I hope that what I'm trying to say is understood. So then, to avoid embarrassing myself any further, let's move on to Prisoners of the Lake, the first story in this box set. It's the Earth-based story of the box set, and you know, with that you sort of like have the question of where's the Brigadier, where's Benton? You could sort of like get away with Benton, as they went away with not having Mike Yates in the what's it called, Three Doctors. But you know, the Brigadier is a character who's a bit harder to ignore, and narration does kind of cover that by sort of having a bit of a line saying, oh, the Brigadier was handed these notes and then he added them onto his scientific advice to the Doctor. And, you know, that sort of like works to fill in his place. And while it does work for this story, I do feel that in the long run, not having the Brigadier at all might damage this range as a whole. Casting be the answer? I don't know. Maybe if they could find an actor who would be very good for a role, then I'd be okay with it, but I think, you know, you don't want to recast too much and then have it to the point where it's almost the entire cast has been recast, and it's sort of like gets to the point where you just think, why not recast Joe and Mike Yates as well? But yeah, anyway, recasting is a common question among Doctor Who fans, and you know, it's one that I don't really want to get into right now, because instead I am reviewing Prisoners of the Lake, so let's get back to that quickly and talk about the ins and outs of the story, because it is very much an Earth-based story. But it's not one like we've had in the Third Doctor's era, but it does still fit in the era as well. You've sort of like got, of course, a lake, as you could probably gather by the title, and there is a ship at the bottom of that lake that has been discovered, and basically the Third Doctor and Joe have been called in to investigate, while Mike Yates is already there looking into missing artefacts, which is a sort of like a plot line that doesn't really go anywhere, or at least anywhere that I felt satisfied with. I think there should have been a bit more for Mike Yates to do with that whole plot line there, but it's sort of like brought up at the start and then concluded in one scene, and that's really it for it, and it sort of like dives back into the main plot, which is fair enough, but I do feel that a couple more scenes just to extend that plot. Yeah, I just feel that whole plot line should have probably taken place on screen or on audio, or just, you know what I mean there. But instead it's sort of like left out, and therefore it makes it feel like a bit of the story itself has been left out, which is unfortunate. But enough of the negatives, let's get into more of the positives now, because there are a lot for this story, and that is the fact that it's very much the action-packed Third Doctor that we know and love. It's Tim Trelaw is very much playing that action Pertwee. He doesn't get to drive around in any cool vehicles or use any cool gadgets, unfortunately, this time. But you know, there is a lot of fun to be had with him down in the spaceship, doing all those fun things with the stone robots that are down there with him. And then you've also got some other monsters which come into the story, which I won't mention, because that is quite a nice plot twist that comes along. But yeah, I will say that those monsters did give me nightmares of the Red House a bit. And yeah, that's not really a story that I want to be reminded of too much. But just know that the monsters are quite similar to some things in the Red House. But anyway, Jo Grant in this story is very much Jo Grant we know and love. She has a wonderful relationship with the Third Doctor, and you know, that's sort of like very well done by Katie Manning and Tim Trelaw as well. You sort of like think that it might be lost without Jon Pertwee there, but Tim Trelaw does fill in very well, and you can tell on the extras as well that they have a wonderful working relationship. There's a lot of good banter going on between them as well, and you very much get the feel that they do really like working with each other, and that very much comes across in the story as well, and helps to make the relationship between the Doctor and Jo more organic, I guess, more natural, and that very much does show. We sort of like him teasing her from time to time and her teasing him as well. We also get sort of like the selfless Joe across as well, and sort of like side that comes out in the demons and whatnot, and stories like that. And also sort of like you see the Third Doctor's influence rubbing off in there, and that's one thing that I do like about Jo from the TV era. You do very much see her grow as a character and grow up in terms of age as well, where she sort of like starts off as this clumsy teenager in terror of the Autons, but then sort of like grows a lot more by the time we reach the Green Death. And you sort of like feel the Third Doctor's influence rubbing off on her when she sort of like challenges authority figures, and you sort of like have that in there as well when the Third Doctor's challenging authority figures in this, sort of like calling them pompous and all that lovely stuff that we know and love from the Third Doctor's era. And that's all in here as well. But you also get Jo doing that a bit towards the end, is sort of like standing up for her friends as well, and sort of like making sure they don't make a terrible decision that could threaten the Doctor and Mike Yates' life. That is very nice stuff at the end there. Jo gets even more to do in the next story, the Havoc Vampires, but I'll talk about that a bit later. Mike Yates in this, as I mentioned before, has this also like searching for the missing artifacts plotline that doesn't really go anywhere, and that very much leaves them sidelined for the first half of the story, and so that's sort of like Jo's time to shine. But then during the second half, it's sort of like they switch around a bit, and sort of like Jo gets a bit sidelined, still has some wonderful stuff to do in her scenes, but it's very much Mike Yates who's down there and in on the action, under the water with the Third Doctor, and it's some very wonderful scenes there, and Mike Yates, Richard Franklin, does a fantastic job, and I really do like his character. Would it have been good to have Benton in here as yet? Well, yes it would, but I think Mike Yates works very well also with this story. He also gets a cool moment at the end with a grenade, which is quite good and quite important to the story as well, so it's nice to see him playing an active role in proceedings, rather than in some TV stories where he was not necessarily sidelined, but just sort of like providing a voice for the military personnel as a whole, rather than being an actual character in his own right sometimes. Mike Yates also strikes up a nice relationship with lead archaeologist Frida Mattingly, and she is also quite a nice character who gets along well with the Third Doctor, and you sort of like get the whole idea that she's a civilian archaeologist and whatnot, and the whole thing behind the project of it being backed by these officials, she's not really on that, and so she instantly gets along with the Third Doctor in that respect. So I think that works very well for her character. However, towards the end, I was liking her up until the end, where she sort of like has this odd character turn where I'm not sure what happens, but she just sort of like suddenly has this bloodthirst along with another character whose name I can't remember at the moment, Johnny Repford, and they have this odd sort of like bloodlust at the end there. And when I say bloodlust, I don't mean sort of like something mysterious that goes on. They just suddenly want to blow everything up and sort of like fill in for that role of the Brigadier, which is a bit odd, I will admit, and it sort of like does come out of nowhere with their characters. I can see sort of like the need for it to be in the story, to like add that sense of urgency towards the end there, but at the same time I don't feel that it should have come from their characters, because, or at least if it was going to come from their characters, have it set up somehow earlier, rather than just having it come out of nowhere at the end there. That's rather unfortunate. But other than that, Prisoner of the Lake is a good story, it's an enjoyable romp, it's classic Pertwee stuff with a bit of a difference, and I will give it an 8 out of 10. So now we move on to the Havoc Vampires, which is sort of like the space-based story, the one that fills in that side of the Pertwee era. And having said that, I think it was a good decision to have these two different sides of the Pertwee era fit into this box set. That's very nice, I feel. And yeah, the Havoc Vampires does very much have that frontier in space, Curse of Peladon feel, where it's the Doctor sort of like trying to make peace between multiple alien races, trying to have this meeting of multiple alien races, and obviously it's a marriage in this one, sort of like between the leaders of these two, sort of like humanity and the Chalnov, and they're a bit at each other's throats, but now they've decided to join together and to like make a pact, and obviously not everyone's going to be happy about that on both sides and on other sides as well, and that's when things start to get interesting, and that's where our story generates from. They sort of like have someone trying to disrupt the wedding, And it's basically a whodunit in space to try to work out who did this and whatnot. Also sort of like dealing with the consequences of this and everything. To like reacting to the explosions about the space station and all that wonderful stuff. Before I go any further, I would like to comment on the narration which is in this story and the previous one. And you know, it's very much from the early adventures sort of like feel, and it's sort of like there to help with people who aren't too fond of recasting, sort of like say, oh well, it's not recasting, it's just a narrator also reading in for the Doctor. But you know, that's really just to keep people to kid themselves with, because it is very much the Third Doctor recast with a bit of narration thrown in there. I honestly don't mind narration that much. I think it can work very well in some stories, such as the Yes Men. I think narration was very well used there, because it's not sort of like the Doctor stands up, the Doctor goes over here, the Doctor does this, the Doctor does that. It's very much like, adds more of a book feel to it, I would say. It makes it feel more like a novel in the flow of it, but it also doesn't break up lines or anything. You still have lots and lots of moments of narration, but sort of like during the action bits, you sort of like have the descriptions of what's going on and whatnot, and you just like have these things to set up what the Chalnoth look like, this alien race, to paint a picture in your head, and all that wonderful stuff gets filled in quite nicely by narration. And you know, would it be gotten rid of in the second volume? You know, I wouldn't cry about it or anything. I wouldn't say that it would be losing what makes the range so special, but I wouldn't be disappointed at all if it was kept around for the second volume. Although having said that, I would prefer it to be used a little bit better in the second volume, because at points here it does feel like, did you really need a bit of narration there? No, you probably didn't need a bit of narration there, did you? But anyway, the Havoc of Empires does very much feature a different side to the Third Doctor than the one that was shown in Prisoners of the Lake. I very almost called it Under the Lake then, whoops. But, you know, there is very much the softer side to Pertwee here. That nicer side, sort of like around Jo Grant and whatnot, where he's sort of like comforting her. And it's very nice, very touching stuff here. And it's less of the action Doctor and more of the softer side of the Third Doctor, but still very much the Third Doctor that we saw on TV, just a different side to him, and a side that's explored very much here, despite him being sidelined for the second half of this story, which is, you know, unfortunate in one sense, but it's quite good in another, because it allows Jo Grant at times to take hold of proceedings, and she really does do that very well. At first she's sort of like, about it. She doesn't really want to. She sort of like just wants to get out of here immediately, and she sort of like knows that the Doctor wants to stay and find out what is going on here, even though he says that he doesn't. But you know, she knows him better than that. And also Mike Yates gets sidelined a bit as well. You know, he sort of like gets to do some military investigation, but he sort of like often does that off screen again for the most part. And you know, it's ultimately down to Jo Grant to find out what's going on here, and to also save the Third Doctor's life. Well, I won't go into why, because that's quite an interesting aspect of the story. The characters of the story are quite good, all except for one who I know some people have been quite annoyed by, and that is the wedding arranger. You know, I'm surprised she didn't die, to be honest. I think she probably, out of all the characters, deserved to die. I think it probably could have used her death in there, just sort of like make it a bit more serious story. But you know, she didn't really fit in with the Third Doctor era that well, and you know, it was quite an annoying character in some senses. You know, I wasn't too bothered by her, but I know some people really, really were. Some people have been calling her the worst character Big Finish has ever made. But you know, that's just the way she is, really. You know, some people might enjoy her comedy, I guess, but I personally just think she is rather annoying. In terms of other supporting characters, you have the leader of the Tech Alarm Corporation, which is sort of like the corporation that runs humanity at this point in time. And you also have the Chalnoth leader in there as well. And then you sort of have their two advisors alongside them. They're what make up the rest of the characters in this story, really. And, you know, they are quite good characters, I think, especially the two leaders very much. And as fact, the Chalnoth as well, you could sort of like tell that the Doctor would get in with them and sort of like be friendly around them. and very much Chalnoff leader as well. He gets along very well with. That's some very nice interaction between them two. And he is a very good character, the Chalnoff leader. And also, there is a lot of good character development in there as well, especially towards the end. During part 4, there is a wonderful scene between him and the tech plant leader. And in fact, not just the scene, there's actually quite a few scenes during that episode where it's sort of like developing his characters and sort of like learning to accept each other. It is very heartfelt stuff as well. But also throughout the story, there are sort of like little hints, sort of like little things that go on, and they very much build these two great characters, and also the two characters that are sort of like supporting them and being their advisors. The Teklan one, I honestly can't remember that well, but the Chalnoff one, she was a very good character, I will say. I think she was very nice as well, and although she did have a bit of a bloodlust towards the Doctor at times, and again, I don't mean bloodlust in a mystical sense, I just mean that she wanted the Doctor dead at times. But at the same time, you still get the feeling that she is a wonderful character, and you get the reasons behind her motivations. Reasons behind her motivations? What the hell does that even mean? Reasons behind her actions? Ugh. But yeah, the story as a whole has some interesting twists and turns in there. But ultimately it does come down to a rather dry conclusion, I would say. Which is unfortunate, because it feels like it could have used an extra part or something, or maybe just more time. Because it's basically just like they catch the villains, and that's it really. It's almost like a Scooby-Doo ending, really. And yeah, the lack of a good villain is very much the reason this story is getting an 8 out of 10 for me. It does also have the presence of some monsters in there in the form of the Atto eels, but they don't really do too much, I'd say. They're just sort of like more in the background. They sort of like do turn up a bit in part 4, but they don't do too much, which is unfortunate as well, because this story also then lacks a good monster. However, it doesn't lack a good character development, and it does have a lot of wonderful moments in it, and that is why 8 out of 10 is my rating. So then, 8 out of 10 for both the stories and 8 out of 10 for the set as a whole. I would definitely recommend you pick this up if you are a Third Doctor fan. If you need more Third Doctor in your life, it is a very good set for that. Nothing really incredible, nothing really stand out, but 2 strong stories nevertheless. And that is all I have to say, really. So then, thank you for watching, everyone, and I will see you all next time. Bye, everyone.
Styles detected.
You're looking very smart.
The Doctor won't let anything happen to us. Really, he won't.
Joe? Can you hear me? What's happening? Joe!
Dozens of stone coffins.
Notification. A spacecraft is approaching Docking Bay 3.
This should only take a few moments. We'll have to compensate for the lack of temporal synchromesh, of course. It's just like driving a car in manual rather than automatic.
Doctor, I don't mean to sound critical, but that's space on the other side of those doors, isn't it? Empty space.
Quite right. Good grief.
Oh, there's another stone robot!
3 moons and an asteroid belt. Far too much to ask.
Language assimilated.
What in heaven's name are those things?
Those, Mike, are Atto eels.
Huge!
Very dangerous.
That's what the first one said!
I think we should get out of here before it attacks us too!
You may enter Docking Bay.
According to this, the Earth Empire has arranged a political marriage between the 2 leaders.
Please notify Lady Gwelin that our useless and pointless security consultant has arrived.
Acknowledged.
Excuse me! Woman with reputation in ruins coming through!
Yes, this is Captain Yates. Put me through to the Brigadier, would you?
The whole future of this sector of the galaxy is at stake.
Organic life forms detected.
The Delphon